Howdy. You know how in today's world everything has gone corporate? Well, let me show you something. Try to get this so that it's not really pointing at anything so that, it provides light but doesn't glare. Back in the 1960s and 70s, I guess even in the 50s, there was another term for corporate contractors, let's say. Nowadays, when you are fighting a war, there's a lot of jobs you need doing that you relegate to contractors. There's another word for contractors: mercenary. This is a book, interesting book. It's a collection of uniforms that were worn by mercenaries, soldiers of fortune as they were called. And this is going from the period of the, well, it takes it from the medieval, the free companies of the 14th century fighting in Italy. For instance, what was his name? Francisco Sforza married Cristina Bianca Visconti, the daughter of the Duke of Milan, and became the next Duke of Milan. He was he was the captain of a free company that was operating in northern Italy at the time. A mercenary, but he redeemed himself by becoming the leader of a new faction of politics in Italy. Well, by the time of the 1950s, 1960s, things got a little bit weirder. Southeast Asia was being overrun by mercenaries, though they were called the French Foreign Legion. And what they were old German soldiers, mainly Waffen-SS troops, now wearing French Foreign Legion uniforms and fighting for France. And at the same time, there were companies all over Angola, the Congo, everywhere from Southwest Africa to Rwanda, fighting for various factions. The Belgians had just moved out of the Congo, and all sorts of things were going on there. There were many companies. There was what was his big name? Mad Mike Horai, who was the leader of, I think it was called 5 Commando. He was big then. Well, here, take a look at this. These are the rifles most commonly used by mercenaries at that time. This is basically a G3. This is actually a Spanish CETME, so one could say, argue that it was the rifle of the Spanish Foreign Legion, but in reality, this was mainly the G3. And there were 2 rifles that were very common in Africa at the time. This one, the G3, and oh shoot, this is just not working right, is it? No, you piece of junk. Come on now, you be nice. Okay, do that and then do that. Stupid. The G3. The other was the FNFAL. And this is a Moss 4956. Hardly used, only dropped once at Dien Bien Phu. If you're interested, look up Dien Bien Phu. Long before America got involved in Vietnam, there was the fight of the French against the Viet Minh in French Indochina, as they called it then. And I met many Vietnamese when I used to live in Albuquerque. And the one thing about them is they all seem to love cognac. Well, they got that from the French. Anyway, they were fighting under General Giap, I think was his name. And the French, well, actually the Germans, were fighting for France. And the French lost. They just flat lost and got kicked out of Indochina completely. And we sort of took their place. And the Vietnamese, they didn't care. They didn't care who it was. They were kicking them out, and they were winning. Soon, some years after we left Vietnam, China decided to invade, and they did get down into one of the Vietnamese provinces. But then the Vietnamese kicked them out. Oh, they gracefully left, they say. If you look at Chinese propaganda today, they got slaughtered. They got slaughtered. The Vietnamese don't mess around. They've had generations of war, and they understand it. But I just think it's interesting to have the weapons used in the Cold War, basically, because this was a Cold War fight and this was a Cold War fight. G3 and a Moss 4956, examples that are representative of that period of time.